Alright, to begin with, I take the clays I want to mix together. In this case, it's some of my old clays, and then a little bit of Cernit. That's actually a really thin block that's pictured there, that's white. And then also some Pro Sculpt and some Primo Beige. Looks like what I have in this mix. And then the first step is that I'm just going to chop it all together into little bits. I'm using a ceramic rib. It's just a really thin metal sheet. I use that to chop it up. If you have an old food processor, that's a good thing to use as well, but you'd want to never use it for food again. It would have to be exclusively for the clay. But that's what I often do as well, and that gets it nice and warm too, so the clay is easier to put through the pasta machine. Now the pasta machine I have here is an Atlas. You can find them on Amazon.com, and I splurged and got a motor with it. I love this motor. It is so worth the money because then it's hands-free. Basically, I can just focus on the clay. So I'll turn on the machine. I'm warning you it's loud, but then I'll turn it down so you don't have to hear that. So terribly loud, right? I know. It did take my little son, who's 2, a little while to get used to that noise coming along into the house. So anyway, here's what I'm doing. I basically just took those little pieces of clay and I put them in my hands at first so I can get just a little bit of a pancake. And then the pancakes are really kind of striated. They've got a bunch of different colors in them. You can see the white and stuff in it as well. But then I just keep running it through the pasta machine. And you can see how it just keeps feeding automatically through because I have the motor there running. And it's just a matter of running it through one direction, folding it back up again, running it through again, and then I will add more of the clay pieces and bits to it. And so you can see this sheet of clay I'm working with gradually grows in length. I actually got this idea because I used to be a polymer clay artist where I would use all the different colored clays and make jewelry and barrettes and stuff, and that was a lot of fun too. And using a pasta machine is really big in that environment. And what I was taught there is that it takes at least 20 runs through the pasta machine for 2 colors to blend into each other. So you'll notice that's why I do time after time after time. Just keep on going through the pasta machine. Here I just added a bunch more of the little blocks of clay. Now, you have to be careful when you're putting it through the machine. I've gotten to know my machine well enough that I know what it can handle. But kind of a rule of thumb, I have it set on the thickest setting, which is about an 1/8 inch. And I need to squish my clay down before I put it into the machine, so it's more like 1/4 of an inch, sometimes a 1/2 inch chunks can kind of get in there too, and it'll be okay. But you'll hear the motor kind of complain about that a little bit. So you just want to be careful so you don't ruin your pasta machine, though they are pretty darn hardy. This one I've had, gosh, a long time, probably 5 or 6 years. The motor only got a couple years ago, and it has been an excellent improvement. Otherwise, you have to turn the crank by hand, and that can be tedious, especially as you see I'm busy with my hands otherwise. So I just keep on going with this process. The paper I have out in front is freezer paper, and I have that there just to kind of keep things tidier. The clay tends to kind of break off a bit. You have little bits and crumbs. Also, depending how old your clay is and what brand, but especially the age of it, that will make it a lot more crumbly. So sometimes if you find you have a clay that's too crumbly, you can add a couple drops of the Sculpey diluent, or I think they're calling it clay softener now, which is a much better name. So you just add a couple of the drops of oil is what it is basically. And that helps your clay be nice and smooth again. Now you can see that this bit of clay is getting much better, and so every time it looks like it's about done, I go ahead and add some more bits in. And this can be kind of time consuming, but you don't have to do it very often. I probably do it once every couple of weeks and get some clay all ready for me to sculpt whenever I feel like it. It's so nice to have clay all mixed up and ready to go, so when the inspiration hits, you can just start sculpting. So this is how I do it with the smaller pieces. In the next segment, you'll see that I take these smaller pieces and then basically you make these sheets. This one's getting to be about a medium length sheet. I'll probably get it twice as long before I start adding another sheet to it, because I do it in sheets. Once I get about twice the size of this one, then I just set them down and then start working with another bit of clay. And then in the end, you end up having like 4 or 5 sheets, and then you mix those all together. So that's how I work that. Here, I'm taking more of the bits of old clay, because like sometimes when you make a doll, you won't end up using all of that clay. And you can't just use that clay and then add a totally new mix to it, because the color could vary slightly. And so what you do is you just use that old clay, throw it into your new mix, so it just becomes part of it, and then that all becomes one uniform color again. You can see how the different color blobs and striations are going on a lot in this clay. It's very, very speckled at this point. And so I'll just keep on going, giving it at least 20 times through. And I always watch it very carefully. You want to make sure there are no striations in it, because especially once you bake the clay, the striations will grow. Like, it'll become more obvious, is what I mean by that. They'll darken, because all the clay darkens just slightly. So you want to make sure that those are completely gone. You can see I just keep adding to it. And at the end here, I'll have the sheets of clay that I'll start layering upon each other, and then let those blend together. Till at the end, I have some long sheets that are all the same clay color. And then I end up rolling them into kind of a sausage shape, and then wrapping it in Glad plastic wrap. That seems to be one of the best plastic wraps to use. You might notice that each time I fold it in half, and then I insert it into the pasta machine fold side first. That's another trick from my clay making days a long time ago, where I researched that that's what was supposed to be the best way. Like, you get less air bubbles and stuff like that if you do it that way, because I guess starting with a fold, it gives all the clay and the air a place to go upward and outward instead of getting trapped inside the clay. So that's the reason for that. You can see each time it gets looking pretty good, I just go and mess it up again with more of that crumbly clay that's all different colors. But that's just part of the process with it. If you keep doing it long enough, it all blends together. So it works. Anyway, this is how I put the clay together. I hope you find this video helpful. I'm going to just let the rest of it play out so you kind of get an idea in real time about how long this takes. I always think it's fun to see what other people do, and so I'm hoping that this video can be helpful for you as well. Of course, if you don't have a pasta machine, you can do the same process just with your hands kneading it. I would highly recommend like maybe going to a thrift store of some sort, and oftentimes they will have old food processors there, and that works out well, because then at least your clay can get chopped up really fine and kind of mixed color-wise first, and then it'll be warmer. So then if you need to do this by hand, which would just be a lot of kneading, basically, you just keep kneading it, kind of lengthening it out into a snake or worm shape, kind of thick, and then you fold that in half, kind of twist them around each other, and then knead that back into a single worm or snake shape again. That's the process that way. So anyway, but I highly recommend a pasta machine. They are lots of fun and make life a lot easier. Of course, you would never want to use this pasta machine for pasta again, because once something has been dedicated to clay, it stays only for clay. Here's what I was talking about earlier, where I start layering the sheets upon each other. And then you can see it starts to grow quite a bit in length. At the end, it does get a little bit unwieldy to hold on to, but you also know you're almost done. And then here is the blob of clay as it's finished. This blob of clay is full of possibilities. I love to see this blob of clay ready to go. I wrap it in Glad plastic wrap. That way it'll keep it dust-free, and then I can just use it when I'm ready. So that is how you mix clay together using a pasta machine.